Season 2 of Graham Hancock's Netflix special Ancient Apocalypse is a must-see. In fact, I would go as far to say that it's even better than the first season. And in this video, I'm just going to give you a brief synopsis on the 6 episodes that this series consists of and encourage you to go watch it for yourself and share it with other people because it does a fantastic job of sharing the mysteries of lost ancient civilizations around the world and in a way that will help bring new eyes to this incredible field that is continuing to grow. In fact, the interest in lost ancient civilizations has grown significantly over the last several years. And it's shows like this that do it profound justice. So I'm going to speak off the cuff in this video. Unfortunately, I'm not able to share screenshots from the show because Netflix created a barrier to where you can't even do a screenshot on your computer to get an image of it. But that's okay because you're going to go watch this show yourself. Now, in episode 1, they go to White Sands National Park in New Mexico, and they share footprints that date back nearly 23,000 years ago. In fact, 22,860 years ago to be precise, which is a mind-blowing fact in itself because just a few years ago, footprints dating that old were not supposed to be in North America. So that in itself is a profound fact. But what's interesting, and I know that a lot of people that are interested in the topic of lost ancient civilizations are of course familiar with the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe of approximately 12,800 years ago all the way until 11,600 years ago. A 1,200-year window where the climate changed dramatically, there was a sudden drop in temperatures, 75% of all mammals in North America died. And what's interesting is that they are still teaching, I'm talking about the academics and mainstream archaeologists, that the 75% of all mammals were killed off by humans from overhunting. Now, that is so far-fetched, but what this docuseries highlights is the fact that these animals existed among humans for thousands and thousands of years before they went extinct, which only highlights how unlikely it is that they died off from overhunting. And the reality is this: these people that deny this, that deny the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe as being the source of this mass die-off, are seemingly contradicting themselves when it comes to the climate change narrative, in that they're saying that us humans are killing the planet, we're killing off all these animals, and you would think that with that line of thought, it would make them believers in that the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe would be the result of killing off these animals. But I digress. Now, the episode goes in from there to the Amazon, where there is 6 million square kilometers of forest. And what's fascinating is that they are now finding literally hundreds and even thousands of geoglyphs, essentially geometric shapes that are being found in the lush forest of the Amazon. Some of them are 1,000 feet across. They consist of squares and circles. And through the use of LiDAR, and this is where it actually segues into episode 3, but they go out there with, planes and they use drones with the LiDAR technology, and they immediately found 9 additional geoglyphs carved into the earth that were previously unknown. And that in itself, right there, that discovery of 9 massive geoglyphs pays for the series in itself, as far as the justification to have this be a mainstream docuseries that is brought to the international forefront. Because without this show, those 9 additional geoglyphs would never have been found. Or at least, I shouldn't say never, but they were found because of this show. And that right there in itself goes to show that the works of Graham Hancock and others has done a profound justice and service to the topic of lost ancient civilizations. Because without this show, apparently the mainstream archaeologists were not going out there looking for these geoglyphs, at least in that exact spot. I'm not saying they're not looking for geoglyphs at all, but I think you understand where I'm going with this. And what's fascinating about these geoglyphs, again, they consist of circles and squares and even circles within squares, is that this highlights what's the word I'm looking for? Geometrical knowledge, the knowledge of geometry, big word, right? As well as the knowledge of science. Guys, these shapes carved into the earth are not something that people just did on a whim. Again, they're as big as 1,000 feet across. This in itself highlights mathematical knowledge, scientific knowledge, at a level that's not supposed to exist 2,500 years ago in the Amazon based on what we were taught in school. They're supposed to be nothing more than primitive hunters and gatherers that are collecting food for a living. And to go as far as to create those geoglyphs highlights something else, because they've also found, through the LiDAR technology, raised roads connecting these geoglyphs. And it's estimated that hundreds of thousands of people would have inhabited these areas in order to construct them. That's not to say hundreds of thousands of people took part in the construction, but the area is so widespread that everywhere they go looking throughout the Amazon, they're finding new geoglyphs, which highlights the fact that there was a civilization in the Amazon dating back as far as 10,000 years, as the docuseries shares, that were doing things that far exceed what we thought was possible based on our known historical narrative. Now, it even becomes more interesting when they go over to the northeast portion of the Amazon in Brazil, and they found paintings on stones that date back 13,200 years. And in fact, that makes them the oldest rock art paintings in all of North America. Or in the Americas, I should say, because that's, of course, South America. So even older than the oldest cave paintings and rock paintings that we found from the Native Americans of North America. That in itself is a profound discovery. And where it becomes even more interesting is that there is a total lack of rock art paintings that date back during the time of the climate catastrophe, or the Younger Dryas, excuse me. So in other words, we're finding paintings, rock art paintings, before the Younger Dryas and after the Younger Dryas, which highlights what an incredible catastrophe it was, that it caused this missing link in human history in those areas. It highlights how devastating this catastrophe actually was. Now, what's even more interesting than all of that is the fact that they have found DNA in mummies and various, remnants of human remains in South America that has Polynesian and even Aboriginal DNA in it. However, this DNA is not found anywhere in North America. And here's what's so significant about that, is that we were, of course, all taught that the Bering Land Bridge across Alaska connecting to Russia is how people over thousands and thousands of years migrated across into North America through the tundra during the middle of the last ice age, which doesn't make a lot of sense that people would have taken that direction. But that's what we're taught, and they still teach in school today. But here's the big mystery, is that if that was the case, that humans took the Bering Land Bridge, why do we not find the Polynesian DNA and Aboriginal DNA in North America, but we find it in South America? Because again, if humans went from North America, from the Bering Land Bridge, and then eventually found their way to South America, we would have, of course, found that DNA evidence in Native Americans of North America. Think about that. Native Americans are amongst the most studied ancient civilization, you could argue, from the standpoint that archaeological excavations and study in North America are profound. There are people with PhDs all over the place studying that and have been for many, many decades. So if that DNA existed in North America, it is very reasonable to say that it would have already have been found. In fact, it hasn't been found, and so it doesn't exist there, which is suggestive evidence that ancient humans were far more advanced than what we were taught as far as seafaring capabilities, that they found their way across the Pacific Ocean and made their way to South America, which was previously thought to be impossible. This Netflix series highlights that. Now, it also takes us over from there to Easter Island, which is an enigma of itself. We know a lot about Easter Island, but there's so much we don't know. And what I love about this Netflix series is that it highlights some of the profound mysteries. For example, the Moai statues, and there's more than 1,000 of them, many people are not aware of that, but there's similarities of them that are found on the total opposite side of the Pacific Ocean in Indonesia. If you go watch the series, you could see how it shows the similarity of hands in front of the statues, and you find them not only in Easter Island and Indonesia, but as far away as Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, and as well as another location in Turkey as well, which the series highlights. Listen, I understand that mainstream archaeologists will say it's just a coincidence. They've already said that. I encourage you to look and think for yourself, like I always say. These similarities are profound, and it seems to me that it goes beyond a coincidence. But this is where it becomes even more interesting, because it goes into the legends of a flood, which again, are found in hundreds of cultures across 5 continents around the world. But there is a striking similarity in these legends of a flood that are so remarkably similar that it goes beyond a coincidence. For example, they have legends talking about how there were 7 people that survived the flood, the catastrophe, and then went to other parts of the earth to repopulate and carry on the species. And that is told in ancient Sumeria, which of course is what we were taught is the oldest civilization documented, but it's found in Egypt as well as India, ancient India. The number 7, again, let me just clarify. Across these continents, these same legends consist of 7 people surviving a flood catastrophe and then went on to repopulate across the world. The number 7 is, I'm sorry, it's just too specific. I don't think that's a coincidence. Can I prove it? No. This is, again, suggestive evidence. And again, this comes back to thinking for yourself. Does that really make sense that that's just a offhand number? Like, oh yeah, 7 people survived. Like, is it really a coincidence that hundreds of cultures across 5 continents share legends of a flood when we know the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe caused a sudden and rapid rise in global sea levels of over 400 feet, which if you lived on or near a coastline would have been completely catastrophic. And then they come up with, so that in itself isn't a coincidence if you ask me, but that they have a tale across these multiple civilizations separated thousands of years apart, discussing how 7 people emerged and survived it and went on to other parts of the world. Not a coincidence, but that's my opinion. Now, Graham Hancock also highlights in the show that the Moai statues are carved out of soft volcanic ash that solidified into stone, and 400 of them sit at the base of the volcano on Easter Island, and it almost appears as if something happened to cause a sudden stop in the creation of these Moai statues. Because some 400 of them sit there in various stages of completion. Why would they suddenly stop? But as this segues into episode 3, it becomes really, really interesting because there's evidence that suggests that Easter Island dates back far older than what we were taught. And this fact is absolutely incredible, but let me real quick mention the sponsor of this video. 1775 coffee. Most Cape Cup pods are like a mystery meat in a plastic shell. You have no idea what's hiding inside. Low quality beans, mold, pesticides, all sealed in plastic that keeps them in a guessing game. Studies show that these contaminants are a big problem in mass-produced coffee, and roasting them does not burn them off. They're still in your cup. Enter 1775's Coffee's new Cape Cup pods. These aren't your typical low-grade, mass-produced excuses for coffee. Their new K-Cup pods are locked and loaded with single-origin, high-altitude beans, hand-picked for real flavor. No fillers, no mold. Whether you're into medium roast, dark roast, or the mushroom blend to boost your brain, 1775 Coffee's got your back. So if you're tired of drinking coffee that tastes like it's been filtered through a wet sock, hit up 1775coffee.com/brightinsight and get 15% off. Grab your 24-pack and stop settling for mystery coffee today. Guys, this is some of the best smelling coffee I've ever inhaled in my life, and the flavor is through the roof. I cannot recommend 1775 coffee enough, and it's companies like this that are promoters of free speech. They support creators like me that speak their mind. And again, I can't recommend them enough. Go to 1775coffee.com/brightinsight. Link is in the description and pinned comment down below. With that said, back to the video. Now, as I was just mentioning, there is profound evidence that suggests that humans were in Easter Island many thousands of years before we thought was possible. And bananas, the fruit bananas, is evidence of this. For example, they have evidence that bananas somehow came to Easter Island inexplicably 3,000 years ago. They've ruled out that the seeds were not carried over by birds, that these were in fact brought by humans, which is not supposed to exist. Guys, the Moai statues date back something like 800 to 1100 years ago, but humans brought bananas over thousands of years before that? More than 2,000 years before the Moai statues are known to have existed, assuming that is their true age. Guys, this is an enigma. Easter Island is an enigma, and there are legends there that suggest that humans date back far earlier. Now, legends are, of course, dismissed in the scientific community and the academics and archaeologists, as we know. But I cannot recommend that episode enough. And again, this series, Ancient Apocalypse Season 2, consists of 6 episodes. They're about 40 minutes each. It's very easy to binge watch this show. It's one of those shows you want to share with family and friends because it really highlights a lot of the mysteries of ancient civilizations. And this segues into episode 4, which was one of my favorites as well, which goes over to Peru and Sacsayhuaman and highlighting these what's the word I'm looking for? Polygonal stones, big word, of course, another one. And how they are pieced together with laser-like precision. No, I'm not saying they were carved by lasers. And this is where the episode becomes fascinating, because when I went to Peru myself, I was expecting to see an evidence of a lost technology that these stones had been pieced together with, again, a laser-like technology because they're just so precise. But when I was there, I learned of the legends that were shared down by the Inca that say that the stones were molded. They were heated and smushed together. And when I stuck my hands between the stones where they had become loose from, thousands of years of earthquakes, they were unbelievably smooth, and they seemed to be pillowed or marshmallowed out as if they were squished together. And I love that this docuseries highlights this legend, because there are tales that these stones were superheated, and they find evidence of it going over to Mexico in the Temple of the Moon, where inside this cave there is rock carved out from the bedrock, and the stone appears to have been heat treated. In fact, it was heat treated. But it would have had to have been at least 1400 degrees Celsius, which is more than 2500 degrees Fahrenheit. Guys, to achieve that level of heat is no little thing. Your campfire doesn't get anywhere near that hot. And so this ties in to the Sacsayhuaman and how, if you go to Cusco, Peru, for example, which of course where Sacsayhuaman is, there is clear evidence of 3 different methods that were used to piece these stones together. It couldn't be more obvious. And I apologize for not having pictures in front of you, but I have shared this in many videos before. And again, I don't want this video to be, by adding these images into here as much as many of you will want to see them, I don't want to take away from you going to watch this series yourself. You need to go watch it. And that's what this video is about, is to encourage you to go do so, because it's a masterpiece and Graham Hancock hit it out of the park. But the mysteries, I'm going to keep this going as I look at my notes. Going back to the Amazon, in episode 4, they discussed the Terra Praetor, which is also known as Amazonian dark earth soil, which rejuvenates with bacteria that exist around known human settlements of that time. In fact, they've even found numerous part shards within the soil. So it's very clear that humans had geoengineered this soil, which is a mind-blowing fact in itself, because that demonstrates scientific knowledge. And why can't we do that today? Because if you think the chemicals we're adding to our soil is some sort of achievement, well, guys, it's making us sick. But we don't have to go down that path in this video. But they also go in, and of course I'm all over the place here because I'm looking at my notes, but they go into ayahuasca and DMT, dimethyltryptamine. And of course, many of you that have followed Graham Hancock's work for a while and have listened to him on Joe Rogan's podcast would have heard him discuss ayahuasca many times. But I love how this docuseries highlights the scientific knowledge behind the miracle of ayahuasca in itself, how they had to mix 2 very specific elements, a bark from a tree and a root from a different tree, and they combine them together and extract the dimethyltryptamine from them, which is a chemistry project in itself. And it begs the question, how did they figure this out? It could have taken hundreds of years to figure that out. And what inclined them to do so? Guys, it is a true mystery. It highlights that the knowledge of ancient humans was far more sophisticated than what we thought was possible. And although a lot of people get lost when they hear something that they consider a drug and they're like, I don't want to hear about this, guys, you really need to look into the dimethyltryptamine. It's in all of our bodies, and if you look into the details of how it's created and to be able to be consumable in the human body, because if you just consume the bark or the roots, it won't do anything. You have to mix them together, you have to boil them. There's an extraction process, which is straight up chemistry. So that in itself highlights advanced human knowledge dating back thousands of years. Now, let me see here, let me keep going. The episode 5 goes into not just ayahuasca, but they segue over to Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, a site that I cannot wait to get out to. I live in Arizona. It's a shame I haven't been out there yet. But there are similarities of it that are reminiscent of Göbekli Tepe. In the series, it shows you these T-shaped doorways, which are reminiscent of the T-shaped pillars at Göbekli Tepe. Look and think for yourself and tell me that that isn't a remarkably similar shape. I'm not saying it's 100% connection, and neither does Graham Hancock. But when you look at it, it does raise questions, especially when you consider the knowledge, the astronomical knowledge that went into Chaco Canyon. You know, based on moon cycles, it was clearly, if you go watch the series, it highlights that it was undoubtedly created by people with highly sophisticated astronomical knowledge. It's indisputable when you see the line items of evidence that are discussed in the show that make it abundantly clear that that's the case at this site. Now, episode 5 then segues down into the Maya of Mexico, and they go to the Temple of the Sun, which shows, again, evidence of astronomical knowledge on how they were obviously, numerous temples there, were created with astronomical knowledge involving the spring and fall equinoxes. That with the sun and rising and setting on, on the equinoxes at certain temples, and the sun shines right in through the door. Guys, this highlights that whether it's that site or Chaco Canyon, there would have had to have been generations of built knowledge before constructing these sites to make it happen. There would have had to have been many decades, possibly hundreds of years, of accumulated knowledge in order to construct those sites for how they face the equinoxes today. So now getting into episode 6, which is the final episode. Again, it segues into highlighting how the astronomical knowledge of these temples, but it also goes into the Mayan calendar, that's a video I need to make because I haven't actually covered that. I talked about it briefly in probably one of my videos 7 years ago, but not in depth. And it highlights how there is actually 3 calendars that consist of the Mayan calendar. The first is the sacred calendar, which is 2 bilateral calendars, 13 days apiece, and accumulates to a total of 260 days. The second calendar is called the solar calendar, which has 365 days just like our calendar. But when you use these 2 calendars in tandem, as the docuseries highlights, it gives a unique name to each individual day over a period of 52 years, which is remarkable. And then there's the largest calendar, the one we're most familiar with, and they call it the long count calendar. And it was possibly used for calculating the ages of the world. There are legends saying that there was 4 ages of man before us. And this goes into, many people call that woo-woo, but when you look into the cycles of catastrophe on Earth and you look back how far humans date, it is pretty obvious that there has been cycles of humans that have, accumulated great feats, which is what I believe, and that were knocked out by a cataclysm and had to start all over. This is, out of all the things that I've studied involving the mysteries of lost ancient human civilizations, catastrophes appears to be the true missing link in our lost past. And I know many people watching will agree that it's very clear that when you look at humans dating back over 300,000 years, and we know almost nothing before 6,000 years ago, that huge window of 300,000 years plus, it raises questions. And I think we need to entertain that the nature of planet Earth is far more volatile than many people consider. And what's disturbing about the Mayan calendar is that we're now in this 80-year window. So let me just say, a lot of people were focused on December 2012, the end of the world. No. That puts us into the window of this 80-year period where there's essentially the end of the world is supposed to happen. Now, when you look at the word apocalypse, it can mean knowledge coming to light. It doesn't have to mean the sky's on fire, but if you look at the scientific data involving ice ages and interglacials and glacial periods, guys, we are now absolutely in the window due for another freeze. Not saying it's going to happen in our lifetime, but it's something that people should probably consider. Now, let me segue out of the show and talk a little bit about Graham Hancock. He recently went on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast to bring attention to the show. And he highlighted the details of the previous debate he had with Flint Dibble from earlier this year, back in April, I believe. And thankfully, they took it upon themselves to correct the numerous examples of line items of evidence that Flint Dibble had gotten incorrect. And it was used in a way for him to look like he had won the debate when he really hadn't. I was saying this since day one. I'm like, he got so many things wrong, and people made Graham Hancock out to look like he lost the debate. And that's not what I saw at all when you look at the actual facts behind it. But I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Graham Hancock. He came out of this show and his recent appearance with Joe Rogan victorious. I feel like he's been vindicated. And this show, guys, Like when you look at all the graphics that are used, even the music, it's so engaging. Like it's a total victory, and I couldn't be more proud of the guy, because I understand that he was bummed out after that debate with Flint Dibble, and because he got a lot of criticism for it, of course. And it sucks, guys, when you're in the public light and you get tons of criticism from people when you're just trying to do a service to share mysteries of our ancient history, and to see how visceral it gets and how nasty it can become and so divided, it's very hurtful. You know, it's like I tell people I think the pyramids weren't built to be tombs and people hate on me for it. It's pretty funny, but like it can be hurtful. So I'm very curious to hear all of your thoughts on this show. If you have seen the show, leave a comment and share what you thought was the most interesting takeaway from it, what details you thought highlight the true mysteries of lost ancient civilizations. And again, if you haven't seen the show, take it upon yourself to start watching it. It's 6 episodes, 40 minutes apiece, and you can binge watch it very quickly. It's fast-paced, and it goes to show Graham Hancock's incredible knowledge on these topics. Like, they really shotgun. So you heard me in this video just talk all over the place on these different things, but that's kind of how the show goes. Like, they're taking you from here to here to here to here, showing Graham in these vehicles going out into the middle of nowhere to show you these incredible sights. And it really just goes to show how his over 30 years of experience of documenting the mysteries of lost ancient civilizations has come to a head, and that he's now able to present it in a mainstream show, which was so desperately needed. I remember him being on Joe Rogan's podcast years ago talking about how a really profound docuseries or documentary would do a complete service to this topic, and now we have it. So again, go watch the show if you haven't. Again, look at my sponsor, the 1775 Coffee, link in the description and the pinned comment down below. And hit the like button and subscribe. I'm going to be doing a live stream today. If you're watching this video, within the next couple hours, I'll be jumping on a live stream to answer questions and talk about this show more in depth. But I hope that you guys will take it upon yourself to watch it. And again, thank you for your time, and I'll have another video for you real soon. Take care, everybody.